Hi, and welcome to Wisdom for the Church. I'm John, and we'll go ahead and get right into it. In a previous video, just recently, I put out a video that was about wokeness and its insult to your intelligence. In other words, you are told to deny exactly what you see right in front of you and instead accept a worldview, a set of ideas and realities that you see are not happening on much of a large scale. We'll say systemic racism, for example, but you're told that it's the biggest problem known to man, while you're ignoring or told to ignore the things that you see right in front of you that are not being addressed, such as a systemic and large scale anti white movement that's been going on for quite a long time. It's the insult to your intelligence. You're made to feel dumb or crazy. The insult to your intelligence. Check out that video. But I want to talk about something similar regarding wokeness because I think it's important to talk about a lot of false things about it. And I think in the future, maybe I'll talk about some solutions that I think the Bible would present to this false way of thinking and living that is wokeness or social justice. So, what I wanted to talk about today is regarding wokeness or social justice, insert similar term here, not the insult to your intelligence, but rather the emotional manipulation that goes on with wokeness. Wokeness is an emotional manipulation. And I think one example that I wanted to draw from in scripture, though it's not specifically about 21st century wokeness, I think we can apply some of the concepts in this text to what we see going on today. And the concept is Judas Iscariot, the original social justice warrior. Who in the New Testament claimed to care about the poor most of all? I would argue it was Judas, the one who would betray Jesus out of the 12 disciples, the one the scripture talks about as was doomed to destruction. See John 17. But Judas had control of the money supply for Jesus and his disciples who traveled around with him. Judas also stole from that treasury while claiming that they needed to give more money to the poor. Listen to what John chapter 12 says. Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief, and having charge of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. So Judas had ulterior motives. He had evil motives, even though he claimed to be doing what was right, caring for the poor. In this case, he had his misplaced priorities anyway because Jesus was accepting worship, and that trumped Judas's motives, even if they had been good, although we know based on the text they were not. But Judas claimed to be the saint that cared about the poor. He claimed to be a champion of those less fortunate. He claimed to be the one who was going to right all the wrongs of, we'll say, wealth disparity, or at least lend a helping hand to that end. But in reality, he was shaming those, guilting those who are around him in order for himself to gain. There was some emotional manipulation going on. And so why do I use this text as a launching point? I use it as a launching point because I believe we see something very similar in modern wokeness or social justice. Think about it. How often have you come across something along the lines of, if you don't participate in this BLM march, you don't care about black people? Or if you don't do such and such a thing exactly the way that we say it at the exact time, if you don't post this black square on your social media, you don't care about these people. Or if you don't celebrate whatever holiday, you don't care about these people. And so compassion is used against you to emotionally manipulate you into doing something that actually is oftentimes evil. And the people that are up top and are the smartest and wittiest, they usually know what they are doing. They are manipulating you using sometimes good desires to sway you to do things that serve their ends, not yours, but more importantly, not God's. Emotional manipulation. Or think about a speech you may have heard, Or think about a press conference, or maybe you've been to a Christian conference and seen something like this. Think about the anecdotal stories, some of which are true, of a horrendous thing that happens between, let's say, a white person and a black person. Usually, the black person is the victim at the hands of a white person. And based on that, which is horrible, and those sorts of things do happen, you are then instructed, told that the way to follow God, the way to love your neighbor is by joining this movement known as social justice. And if you don't, you're a terrible, horrible, awful person that doesn't care about the poor or less fortunate or an ethnic minority, or you fill in the blank. Or how about with abortion? If you don't support the right to choose, you hate women. Emotional manipulation. Wokeness is rhetoric, and it is an expert. Those who lead in these kind of ways of thinking are experts at manipulating your emotions. And it's a horrible, horrible thing, because the Bible has a lot to say about those who know better and lead others into sin. It talks about leading others into sin in general, and it will not be good for those who do not turn away from that evil, but particularly for those who know what they are doing. Like a Judas knew what he was doing when he was asking for money for the poor. He meant for himself, but he guilted those around him. Wokeness is very, very similar. When George Floyd passed, for example, how many of you were guilted into some sort of public response about the evils of white supremacy? I'm guessing some in this audience were. That's because you were emotionally manipulated into acting before you even knew what was going on, or before even realizing, should I even be talking about this situation? Should I really be as invested as I am in this, even though 10 other things happened at once? You were emotionally manipulated by this woke ideology. So former video, it plays with your mind. It tells you that 2 plus 2 does not equal 4, but it actually equals 6 or something. You need to accept that it's 6. And this time, you were guilted to act fast and act usually without the facts, and usually act in error. And as we could see in the narrative, the true narrative about Judas betraying Jesus and his motives, has real world consequences. If you see it, my recommendation is to gently correct those who are swayed by that kind of argumentation, the manipulation of your emotions. Those are 2 tactics of wokeness: intellectual dishonesty, emotional manipulation. I'm not saying that everyone who is sensitive to these issues is doing that, by the way, but I am saying a lot of it goes on and it is not helpful. May the facts be what sway us. May we be, as Christians, people of truth, because we have been bought by the blood of the truth, Christ. I hope you found this helpful.